Welcome back, everybody. Today, I got a story for you again. I always love giving you these little stories because basically it can be very difficult to break down exactly what's been going on, and there's been a lot going on. So recently, I've put out a whole bunch of new Loras. So coming out from Super Rangers, which is one of my test models in SD 2.1, we got a retrain of Abstract Chaos, which is a model from 2023, February, I think, or January maybe. That was actually a checkpoint in 2.1. We've also got Helldivers Retrain, which was a project of capturing screen video. So literally the intro for the game, we just captured some frames. We've also got open source photographs for Super Fashion, My Dog for Big Doggo, Star Citizen, more in-game screenshots, Andromeda Spaceship, which is obviously like a spaceship from Star Citizen only, not just like a general model. We've also got my 4 assassins, Zoke, Meek, Zook, and Cab. These were all from the same father dataset. Again, a 2.1 model. So there's a lot of retrain stuff going on, like Cthulhu Bishop was quite famous back in the day, but mostly because of the way that I blended the checkpoints. There's a second part of that coming up. Also, we've got some photogrammetry. People were wondering, why are you training a car? Why are you training a car? It's because it was photogrammetry. Same with this. So I did this first because it's easy to keep the CGI under control, right? And then I did this in real life. So this is my old car, basically. It's gone now. She's long gone, unfortunately. She got a bit of underbody rust at age 20. Unfortunate, but that's the way it goes sometimes. And then, of course, I've got the carb, which is the retrain. This is the original. So I already gave out a test Lora data set for people to learn how to train Loras. And that's different images, but it's got the same name because it is technically the same thing, but it's kind of like a descendant of this one. Anyway, what I want to talk to you today about is my passive detailer Loras, okay? So one of the things which I did with SDXL, and it worked even better in Flux, was the passive detailer. So not the true world is a structural and sharpness detailer. Abstract Chaos is, as it says, it's an abstract detailer. You could call it a cursive detailer because it prefers curves to straight edges. So, and then I've got 2 experimental detailers, one which is Genesis. This one is based on fractals, and one which is based on electron microscopy, okay? So all of them give different, it's a different passive detailer. And what do I mean by a passive detailer? Well, a passive detailer is basically a Lora that you load without actually invoking the trigger. So you have it loaded in your stack, and then you get the effect, you get the same effect, and you can use it in multiple different ways. So you can inject the trigger to get a stronger effect from it, but you don't need to. And what it'll do is it'll act as a passive detailer Lora. So an enhancer of different flavors so you can get different looks, all right? So I'm going to show you what I mean by that in this video. So first of all, there is a document here. I've written an article. I updated the emergent abilities of FLUX1 Schnell, image to image. Now we're going to be dealing with text to image implementation for this, but I want to show you that you can do image to image as well, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look, not at, well, the article we're going to look at, but mostly so we can see the actual examples. So what we're going to be doing is having a look at a lot of comparison charts. So I have a workflow which I've made, which puts all of it together into a simple, easy to read comparison chart. All of the images we're going to look at were generated with the same prompt, same seed. All of the stuff was exactly the same, and hopefully I've labeled them correctly. So let's take a look at that. So we've already got these open, so let's just remind ourselves what Not the True World actually is. Now you will notice there's a whole bunch of different versions, and that's because when we started out, we start out with quite basic captions and also different settings. So V1 light is 216. V2 is also 216, but we've changed the training recipe. And what we're doing is we're fine-tuning the actual training recipe until we get to the V55, which is a full train. So it's not using the fast mode, okay? A single digit would be a fast mode. A double digit would be a full train. Now, when I say full train, what I mean by that is it's not doing rapid training on Civet. It's actually doing a full config. All right. And I gave away the config as well. So if you're interested, I've written this article here, more Flux training tips. All right. We'll take a quick look at that and I'll run through it quickly because you can look at this at your leisure. And what it is essentially is my announcement of the Zenkai revival, which is what I'm doing at the moment. That basically means I'm retraining a whole bunch of data sets, which are about 2 years old, mostly because Flux is way, way better at learning. But here is the recipe, and you could use that in Koya. So if you use Koya-based trainers, you don't need to use Civet. You can. It's very easy, and I do recommend it to anybody who's either new to it or just doesn't want to stress themselves out, because it is very easy to use. There's a video on that. The link will be in the description, how to train with Civet AI. Super easy. It honestly doesn't get any easier than that, to be honest. You don't even need a GPU. You can just pay with Buzz. And so this is the training recipe that I use. And this is the key points right here. There's a little bit of a guide. I've written a big guide. Here's that video as well. Like I say, easiest method for Flux Lora training with Civet AI. And then we also have, I also did videos on how to do it on other platforms too. So you can check those videos out. You know, I do like to give people alternatives so that you got lots of options for training. All right. Okay. So steps are based on calculations. So this is the basic formula to work out how many steps. And one of the limitations of the Civet AI trainer is 10,000 steps. So if you have more than 150 images, you might find that you're going to need to go a little bit further. And that's where you might want to do Koya and maybe hire out a GPU. There's RunPod, there's Colab, there's all kinds of different solutions for this. All right. But we're not going to hang on that because I want to get to the detailers. So in here, I've given you a whole bunch of guidance. There's loads of guidance and like explaining how the epochs and everything else. I also did a video called Choosing the Best Epochs, Spotting Over Training. So then you know what you're actually going to publish, right? And I provided a whole bunch of enhanced captioning and trainers tools. So let me just take a quick look at those real quick. So these are some of the Flux workflows, which will aid you with getting better captioning. I tell people just keep retraining, change one thing, keep retraining. And then once you're happy, you'll have a really nice model. It'll be as good as it can possibly be. So I always say just get started with tags. So that's just like WD tagger or comma separated words if you want to do it manually. And then captions is like a more normal sentence. So like how I'm talking now, you want to describe an image to another human as that's what Flux actually likes. He likes it to be a conversational sort of spoken sentence. All right. And then for the training tools, we have Compare, Tester, and Stack Tester. There's actually a couple of new ones that are going to get added in here soon. But what they're effectively doing is you load all of your intermediates in, plug in the prompt that you want to test it with, or make a prompt list and put that in so you can use my Zenkai prompt node. And then it will randomly you can just queue them up and go walk away. And then it's going to make these big charts. Now, I'm going to be using stacked. No, am I using stacked? No, I'm just using tester lines, but it's quite a later developed version of it. So there's a lot of different stuff going on. And like I said, they're going to get added in here soon. So those are the workflows which we use to test and find out what's the best thing. I also brought out a couple of extra tools, so we'll just quickly take a look at that. The first one is Caption Root Creator. It's very simple. You put it in the folder with your data set, and then you just type in like an example. So for example, you might type in, you might type photo of XYX style, and it's going to go ahead and make a matching text file with the matched file name for each image in the folder. And then you can upload that to Civet and use the auto tagger to get the remaining. So it's much, much faster if you have a load of images and you just want to get training. Obviously, you can refine the captions later with those workflows which I just showed you, right? And then caption to prompt list is for the other end of the process. So when you download the trained data set from the LoRa which you trained, so wherever it is, however you auto tagged it, obviously you've added a whole bunch of captions to the image set. And so this allows you to download it. You put the files in the data set, run it, and it will turn it into a prompt list for you. Okay. And then obviously you can throw that prompt list into any prompt list node. Don't need to use mine. And then it will randomly choose a caption from the data set for you to test with. because that is the most accurate way to check if your training actually took. Okay. This is all aimed at speeding up training and speeding up the testing of the models so that you can push them faster to your audience or to whoever you want to publish them with. So there it is. So Zenkai Season 4, right, all of these were already made for Flux since Flux came out. So these are the ones I evaluated, my training recipes and so on. And these are the new ones which have just recently come out. And what I'm going to be doing is showing you the difference when I load my passive detailers. So let's take a quick look at these detailers, okay, which I keep going on about. That's the whole point of this video. I want to introduce you to the detailers. So as you can see, if you use Not the True World Flux, you're going to find that it's making architectural focused images. Some of them are fantasy, some of them are realism, some of them are photorealistic, others are artistic. And it comes in a whole bunch of different styles, but you can see that they are not the true world. All right. This comes from a Taoist proverb: the world that can be constructed is not the true world. So that's abbreviated to not the true world. All right. Very simple prompt. Anyway, Abstract Chaos is a really old model, which is based on some artwork that I did in 2022. And there wasn't actually that many images, but because Lora is a patch on the model weights, what happens is the artwork that's buried within the checkpoint will come out. And so when we combine this with Flux, which has got an amazing data set, clearly they trained it really well, you end up with these brilliant images which capture the essence of my work, but go somewhat further due to the knowledge which is buried deep within the model weights. So what we're doing is we're essentially bleeding out these details, but they follow the aesthetic of the style. Now, I will say there's not supposed to be any people in them. And there are some people in some of these. And that's due to the bias of this particular model, right? The best thing about Lora is you can load it with a different checkpoint and you'll get slightly different effects. They will have the same vibe or aesthetic, the style, as it were, but you never really know exactly what you're going to get because it depends how the checkpoint and what it was trained on. But certainly it follows the same format, layout, or style which it was trained on, okay? All of these are like an abstract chaos. That's the whole point of this model. Probably some of the early pictures that I've shown you were the most accurate, but I don't want to spend too much time. I just wanted to explain that this is the sort of thing which it has a bias towards, okay? It's going to push the model weights in this direction, okay? And that's when you use the triggers. Now, Genesis is a fractal set. So it's trained on 140 high-quality fractal images and fractal CGI renders. The prompt lists are always in the training data, or they're in my prompt lists in DJZ nodes if you're a comfyui user. I don't want to spend too long on this because it's pretty obvious what it is. It's a whole bunch of fractal imagery, okay? Loads of different types of Mandelbrots and all that kind of stuff. All right? Good stuff. So we now go to the Electron Microscopy model. Now, this one is exactly as it says on the tin. It's a retrain of my original dataset, which is a mix of public or open source electron microscopy imagery, and also generated imagery, which I generated with an IP adapter based on those photos. I can't remember exactly which model we used, but it's actually got a good idea of what that is. It's just that this is going to make it more like what I trained. Okay. So that's the sort of thing that it's going to make. And it does a great job. And like I said, it does soft focus with kind of macro style when you apply it. So it's really nice. It gives you a different style or aesthetic. And I'm going to keep saying that word loads this video. So, but that's the point. So Genesis is going to give you more fractal-like details and arrangements. And this is going to give you much more sort of close-up detail stuff with weird organic looking details. So these two are experimental. Abstract Chaos is the newest one. It works really well. But the other two, like I said, are very experimental. But that means that I do have 4 passive detailers now. And I know I keep saying passive detailer, cool. Well, what I've got for you, if I was to scroll all the way down to the bottom of this article, you'll notice that I've linked all of this stuff. And in fact, I haven't even updated my 2 latest experimental ones. So they're going to probably be there by the time you see it. But if I take a look at Super Ranger's Flux, let's take a look at that one first, right? As you can see here, we have, yeah, let's have a look. Yeah. So it's only 4 for this comparison, yeah? So with no LoRa loaded, so using just my prompt, you get a Power Ranger that looks like this, which is great, but it's not really a Power Ranger. Do you know what I mean? Because it hasn't been fine-tuned. This is just what Flux has in the base. And this is how you know that the LoRa training actually worked, because now it does look more like an actual Power Ranger. He's got a face for a start, because they always have these funny facial expressions. And it has the pirate logo because that's the particular generation of Power Rangers that these images were taken from. I think it was taken from a movie where all of the Sentai all fight together, all of them, because there's like 42 of them or something. I don't know. But there are many of the same color. So if you're wondering why there's like 3 Red Rangers in one picture, it's because they're from different dimensions and they all teamed up to fight some big bad in this movie. All right. And it's just taken from screen dumps. That's how it was trained. Because I wanted to prove that you can train similarity or coherence. So it's a consistent thing, okay? Anyway, this would be the effect of loading not the true world flux, or NTTW as I keep calling it, as a passive detailer. And you can see from the difference between this image and this image, it's a little bit sharper, a little bit more defined, but you can see that it's trying to do more details in a structured way. And then when you look at abstract, it's pulling out more cursive details, or you could say abstract. This is a bad example, but as you go through them, you can see the different effects. So the top left image is always nothing loaded. So this is what you get with just the prompt. The top right image would be the actual LoRa that was trained and published on its own. And then the bottom 2, again, not the true world, abstract chaos. All right. And as you can see, it actually has a really interesting effect because these look really, really good, but they are there's a few mistakes being made where it's going a bit crazy. The abstract chaos seems to do a little bit better than that. All right. So they all have a slightly different effect. Like for some reason, we've got some tiny yellow rangers. Don't get that in these. Now, I will say we're loading this LoRa and this LoRa, this LoRa and this LoRa. So the bottom 2 are combination. That's why I said plus. So we always have the top right one. And obviously this is what you would have got if it was just going off of just the memory, right? This is just Flux. This is with the LoRa. And then this one is this LoRa plus my passive detailer with no trigger in the prompt. And the bottom right is this LoRa plus abstract chaos flux with no trigger in the prompt, right? Obviously, we're using a prompt caption, which is used to train the model, right? And so on, and so on, and so on. Now, I don't want to hang too long on just this model, but you can see here, this is a good example. There's some stuff going on in the background of the Rangers here. And with my model loaded, we get this sort of background, but with not the true world, it's turned into architecture. Because if you remember, it's an architectural model, right? So it will try to make architectural details. So it's really good at doing that kind of thing. Whereas abstract, if you look at the background, you can almost see the type of artwork in the back. So it's quite controllable and predictable of how it's going to behave. However, you can see also different things happening. So again, I'm going to move on to the next one because I don't want to hang on, because you can spend a lot of time going through these. If you are on any of my recent LoRa pages, you will notice that I've made a post. So if we go back, you have the actual outputs from the model. And oh, it's added them up here for me. Okay, I didn't know it did that. Normally you had to go down to the bottom and actually look at them all down here. So that's enough for the Power Rangers. So let's have a look at the Helldivers. So taking a look at the Helldivers, as you can see, a lot of the time what's going to happen is it's going to be sharper and more detailed with not the true world loaded, but it's going to get better lighting, I guess, Abstract often gives you better lighting, and the curves as well. It's not, sometimes this is too sharp and too rigid. It's a bad example, really. I don't know if I can show some more, but as you can see here, this has got like a sort of a warmer lighting to it. Okay. It's the same here as well. We've got like some more epic lighting in the clouds in the background. Okay. And a slightly different position. It's sort of more like this one. This often will make big changes to some of the poses, which you don't always want. And as you can see here, look, this is what we would expect to get from just the prompt with Flux. And this is almost the same pose. He's just been transformed into a helldiver. And the reason I wanted to do this model again was because I wanted to show that it is possible to teach Flux how to make these with a very small number of images. This wasn't a big data set, okay? None of these data sets are more than 150 images, and some of them are as small as 30 images. In fact, I think I even did a few with 10. But as you can see here, it's trained on the intro movie, or a couple of frames, not even all, just a couple of frames from the intro movie. So you can see this is the guy that's putting the helmet on and saying, become a helldiver. You see it every time you boot the game up. You can probably find the video on YouTube. So that's what that's about. Now here, of course, now we've got a little bit of the sort of alien planet going on, okay? And as you can see, look at the abstract passive detailer. It's given us this crazy environment, whereas all of the other ones were kind of, like if I put my detailer in, it's kind of got a bit basic, whereas this cool lighting that we got from the main model is actually retained and enhanced. Because look at how small, look at, there he is, little guy. Little guy on a rock going, oh my God, I'm stuck on a Terminid planet. And this is the kind of thing which I wanted to capture. And clearly you can see that not really much from the actual model is being used. It's all the Lora patch, okay? Same thing is happening here. Now, I will say the abstract sometimes does crazy stuff, all right? But that's not something that you couldn't just paint out with Photoshop if you really wanted to. Right, so let's move on to the next one. Then we take a look at super fashion, okay? Now with super fashion, this is what you should have gotten out of my trained Lora, and this is obviously, so it's always going to be the same setup, okay? Same setup. And as you can see, we're getting a completely different jacket with the detailer here, and then we're getting a completely different person and background with the abstract chaos. Much more warm lighting. Okay, and you're going to see that continuously. Okay, so there we go. We have like a sort of backrooms aesthetic going on here. And here we have another with a white glove as well. Another sort of empty room. And the abstract chaos is going to fill it with all kinds of stuff. Look at that. That is very abstract, actually. I kind of like that one. And this carries on. This carries on. You'll see this continuing, the sort of the effect of these Lora and how they're actually sort of interacting. Okay. So I don't want to spend too long. I just want to show you how just by loading in these passive detailers, you can actually find some really interesting applications for how these are going to affect the outputs. So you can have a nice output with the base Lora that I've got loaded. And then in combination of this detailer just on its own, with no additional prompt changes, you get a very different output. And again, this is the architectural, this is the abstract, okay? And that's going to carry on. It's very reliable. Like I said, the lighting is kind of nice here, okay? So anyway, let's move on to the next one. So the next one would be the big doggo. So this would be my dog. And as you can see, this is the dog you get from no Lora loaded. And here is my dog. That's literally my dog. So I wanted to show again, it's possible to train characters which aren't even human. Because a lot of the time, you're having to use humans to get proper, consistent characters, and that's not the case. Now, I will say that it's more about the background and the lighting. I don't know if it's very hard to tell. But as we go through here, whoops, no leg. These are almost exactly like what was trained in, but the backgrounds are completely hallucinated and made up. So we can go through these and see that effect all the way through. her ears never stuck up. So I think that is the result of some of the base model training coming out, because she had very hanging down ears like this. But these are pictures of my dog. This looks like a different dog I used to own, the boy. So, you know, like I say, there it is. So again, the cursive detailer, the structural detailer, and then with no detailer loaded. Some images you can't really tell the difference. Like, for example, it's like the cars and the pots in the background are changing. Okay. But there is a slight change. If you was to zoom in, you'd be able to see there is a difference between the images. But I just wanted to show you this does work on, you know, animals, because obviously animals are usually trained as a concept rather than a character. So it's a slightly different approach. But anyway, let's move on to Star Citizen Flux. And as you can see, again, it's the same sort of deal. All right. The background detail is also, you know, now we're controlling what we want to get from the background detail. So this is a lot more rigid edges and structural details, sharpness. Okay. But we kind of lost some of the lighting on the character. I don't know if you can notice the difference there, but this is a lot more true to the data set. So sometimes it even enhances the original focus as well. And so you're going to see that sort of thing keeps coming up. Spaceships, there wasn't enough training data to actually train the spaceships. They're quite hard to train, to be honest. But certainly we've got this view from above, high orbit, looking down on a city. That sort of thing is in the data set and was very hard to get out because it wants to make it look like a plane, really. But a lot of the screenshots that I had were actually trying to do this. And so the Abstract Chaos has made that bleed out. And again, when we're looking at, look at this here, for some reason, it just looks like a car park. Okay. And then with Not the True World, we actually get the gas station. And with Abstract Chaos, it just doesn't quite look as rigid as I say. So these are the different effects of the detailers, okay, that we're looking at. So I'm trying to compare, like, look at the epic lighting on the Abstract Chaos version and see how cursive everything is. Everything is curved. Whereas on this, it's really trying to make everything quite straight, okay? And that's the difference between Not the True World and Abstract Chaos. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one of these because anybody could do that at any time. It's all in the article. All you have to do is go onto my account, click on articles, and you'll find this, which is all about the image-to-image flux, boosted, upscaling, and so on. But if you go down to the bottom, you'll find a link to go direct into those galleries. So now I want to show you some new stuff.